The B-2 battle droid was one of the Confederacy of Independent Systems' most well-known droid units, being used primarily in a heavy infantry role. In Star Wars: The Clone Wars, they were depicted as little better than the standard B-1 units, with perhaps some slightly stronger armor and even less intelligence. But this depiction doesn't really do the droids any justice at all. In Legends, B-2 super battle droids were formidable units that were a huge step up from their predecessors, and most clones actually feared them to some degree. The year is 2081, the world is at war again, and Europe lies in ruins. Genetically engineered super soldiers roam the ruined cities searching for relics of mythical power, constructs of technology indistinguishable from magic, and hunting beings whose genetic origin is not from this earth. Realm Wars by budding author Jesse James is a military science fantasy adventure set in a fictional universe that is a semi-realistic version of our world, and a future where stem cell regeneration, telekinetic abilities, cybernetic and genetically enhanced humans are real, including super soldiers. There's a pretty big sample available on Amazon. The first chapter is quite long, but it picks up afterwards. This book is a great read for any of my viewers that want to branch out of the Star Wars universe and enter another world that respectfully and excitingly handles the sci-fi genre. So make sure you check out the book link in the description below. Star Wars: The Clone Wars' depiction of the B-2 unit is rather misleading, primarily because it's depicted through the lens of the Jedi. When you have a lightsaber, you can make short work of just about anything. But clones didn't have lightsabers, and B-2s were really heavily armored. In some cases, it could take a whole blaster clip to bring one down, and most clones would be dead before they managed to pull that off. Anyone who's ever played Republic Commando knows just how much of a threat these guys really were. The Battle of Naboo showed the Trade Federation in no uncertain terms that their B-1 battle droids were far too flimsy to compose an effective army by themselves. For a solution, they turned to their stronger droids for inspiration. Their droidicas had proven wildly successful, but they were also very expensive to produce and had weaknesses that an army of them could easily be crippled by. Instead, they had the Geonosian engineers that they had contracted look instead to another droid in their armies for inspiration, the E4 Baron droid. Baron droids had been manufactured in small numbers for the Trade Federation. They were essentially used as commandos during the Battle of Naboo. They were bulkier than your standard B-1, but much of this bulk was armor, and instead of having hands designed to operate cheap blaster rifles, they had dual blasters instead of hands in the first place. They had proven incredibly effective at flushing Naboo resistance fighters out of the tunnels beneath Theed, but they were primarily designed for commandos and didn't operate nearly as well on an open battlefield. As a result, the engineers at Bactoid Combat Automata decided to design a new droid entirely, using the Baron droid as inspiration. The result was the B-2 Super Battle Droid. Taking the basic frame of the B-1 and combining it with inspiration of the Baron droid, Bactoid's Geonosian engineers designed a much more heavily armored and heavier hitting droid for use as a standard heavy infantry unit. Their first live fire test under the Trade Federation was during the Kashyyyk Trade Rebellion, in which they were instrumental in crushing the resistance of a guild of Wookiee traders. They began to make appearances in the galaxy at large in the years that followed, usually under the Trade Federation, Commerce Guild, and other similar groups. The galaxy at large was mostly unaware of them, however, until large numbers of them were used for the first time during the First Battle of Geonosis, after which they became staples of the CIS droid army. The B-2 was based primarily on the B-1, especially internally. The droid brains for the new design were all but identical in programming to the originals, and the internal mechanisms for the two droids were very similar, but the resemblance mostly ends there. The B-2 was much more heavily armored, especially in the main body of the droid, which was rather bulky and had the droid's head built into the chest, unlike with the standard B-1s, whose heads were exposed on spindly neck stalks. Their arms in particular differed greatly from those of the standard B-1s. They were very bulky and could be used as blunt weapons in and of themselves. Though B-2s were equipped with hands to manipulate objects and fire specialized blaster rifles, they rarely used them, as they weren't very precise and their primary weapons were built into their arms anyway. Their legs were less bulky and resembled those of the B-1, albeit with heavier armor, resulting in a sort of top heaviness that led to the Geonosians installing gyroscopic devices in the hips of all B-2 units to lower their center of gravity. Jedi frequently exploited this, using the Force to push B-2s down with the knowledge that they would be unable to get up. The heavy armor of the B2 Super Battle Droid is what is most commonly underplayed about the unit. It was composed of heavier alloys than the armor of B1 droids, and armor coverage was also much more comprehensive. It could take plenty of punishments, and many clones opted to use grenades or anti-armor rockets to take down B2s instead of small arms fire when they could. Super Battle Droids only had a handful of weak points. Many clones quickly learned to fire at their joints, and more veteran troopers knew that the surest way to destroy one with a standard blaster was to get behind them and fire a few shots into their heat exchangers, which were exposed on their backs. Of course, the weaponry of the B2 wasn't to be underestimated either. Super Battle Droids had dual repeating blasters built into their wrists, which were capable of devastating barrages of fire and could not be knocked out of their hands. In addition, many B2s were equipped with deployable wrist rockets, which functioned as grenades, while others had dedicated rocket launcher arms, which were, of course, incredibly destructive. Certain models of the droid had specialized cannon arms that featured both a rocket launcher and a repeating blaster. These models also featured deployable energy shields to protect against grenade blasts. The tactics of the B2 Super Battle Droids were simple but effective. They would constantly advance toward their targets with all guns blazing, shrugging off blaster bolts and refusing to stop until either they eliminated all targets or were themselves destroyed. The benefit of this was primarily psychological. If your enemy is advancing constantly, then suddenly you're on a timer for destroying it, which heightens anxiety and makes it harder to fight. Some clone commanders were of the opinion that B2s were actually scarier than droidicas, as droidicas just stayed in one place and shot at you, while B2s were always getting closer. For a clone, B2s were a real threat. The sheer amount of punishment they were capable of taking made blaster weapons mostly inefficient, and anti-armor weaponry wasn't a common element of the standard clone arsenal. Taking B2s down was always a squad effort if there weren't any Jedi around, and many Super Battle Droids were indeed capable of slaughtering whole squads if the clones weren't careful. The heavier models that had built-in shields were even more challenging, as those shields were designed to negate blasts from thermal detonators. Even the most lightly armored Super Battle Droids, furthermore, were devastating in combat, as their wrist blasters were powerful on a level to the DC-15A blast rifle, which was already one of the most high-powered blaster rifles on the market at the time. To make matters worse, these wrist blasters had a really high rate of fire, and being droids, B2s didn't have to worry about overheating all that much. The wrist rockets employed by the standard units were also widely feared by clone troopers, for obvious reasons. As for the Super Battle Droids that came with heavier weapons, even clone commandos feared them. Their rocket launchers were no joke, capable of destroying light vehicles in one shot. And due to how they were integrated into the arms of droid units, they had an almost unfairly high ammo capacity. Even in close combat, clones had plenty to fear. If an enemy got within ranges at which their blasters were ineffective, Super Battle Droids would often opt to just bat them aside with their arms. Those arms were heavy and well armored, and a hard strike to the head would probably be enough to snap an opponent's neck. So with that all said, why then do Super Battle Droids not come off as nearly as terrifying as this in the Clone Wars and most other material from that era? Well, the answer is Jedi. We've said in the past that Jedi make everything look easy, and Super Battle Droids are one of the worst cases of this. Where a clone trooper would take dozens of well-placed blaster bolts just to bring down one Super Battle Droid, any Jedi was capable of just cutting right through them one after the other. Against Jedi, the common B2 tactic of constantly advancing while shooting was even made into a weakness, as it just lined them up for the Jedi to cut down. Were it not for the Jedi, the Republic would have had a much harder time with B2s. The Confederacy was able to produce them in mass quantities like with B1s, and it didn't take long for them to be integrated into the ranks of the CIS droid army pretty well. So that's why B2 Super Battle Droids are a lot scarier than you probably thought, unless you've played Republic Commando, in which case you probably still have nightmares of those guys. So what do you think? Did you have Republic Commando flashbacks while watching this video? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And just before you go guys, there's a whole bunch of needy links in the description below that are looking for clicks. So if you're interested in playing Star Wars games with other Star Wars fans or just talking to other Star Wars fans, we have our Imperial and Clone Wars servers on our Gmod and our Clone Wars server under construction on our Roblox. And we also do have corresponding Discords to all of them. So once again, if you want to interact with like-minded people, all those links in the description need your clicks. And also, if you're into history, make sure you check out my second channel where I discuss all the niche and unknown topics of World War II. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.